places, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Unsung. Today I have in the studio a guy that I've wanted to sit down with for a long time. I am so thankful that he took the time out of his busy schedule these days, and I thank God he is busy. He needs to be, to sit with me and to discuss our city, the music in it, the musicians in it, the love of music, and we'll probably go a lot of interesting places. Ladies and gentlemen, SAL MATTINSON, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very good. I want to thank you, first of all, for taking me up on this. I asked you a while ago to do this, and you didn't, to be honest, you didn't feel like you were in the right place at the right time.
No.
And I was okay with that. I'm a patient guy, and I waited, and I'm glad that I did, because just even off camera, you and I have been talking about really great things. So I want to get down to that. You okay with that?
Absolutely.
First of all, I want to ask, where does SAL MATTINSON come from? Are you native to the area? Where are you born?
Born and raised here. One of the the few local musicians who seems to be. But Calgary's been my home, and I came up here. I've spent time in other cities, of course, not lived, but because of my health background, I spent a fair amount of time in Toronto. And of course, while you're out there, you can't just spend all your time in hospitals, so you end up exploring the local music scene. And my big thing is I'll try to find small guitar stores in places.
Okay.
And just see what's around. I mean, the used gear is always fascinating to me.
Right.
I spent time in Victoria a few years ago, and there's just this little hole in the wall spot. I sadly can't remember the name of it, but they had a Dan Electro guitar on the wall, and a Music Man bass. It's just, this is how I can reconnect with who I am as a musician. I might be in a place where there's no amp in the hotel room, and I don't know anybody here, but hey, I can try guitars.
Yeah, and just some good vintage shit.
For sure.
I'm going to walk you back, though,
Yeah.
because, so you were born in Calgary, and you're in good company there, because Cody Hutchinson was born here. Jeremy Coates, I think, was born here. So you're in, good company, especially bass players. It seems like
Lisa Jacobs.
And right, Lisa was born here too. I've known Lisa since she was 6 years old. So her dad, Stan, was in the same church. And so I learned a lot from Stan in my formative years. Very thankful for him. But what made you the guy you are today? Why music? How did that take hold?
Well, music has just always been a part of my life. It's something I've always noticed. I navigate the world in a very... I'm deprived of sight, if anybody doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of my experience in the world is listening. So if I'm quote-unquote watching TV, I'm listening to what's going on. And part of the soundscape is going to be the music. If I'm in a store, or if I'm in a car, if there's going to be the radio or something like that. So I started off, my parents they're incredibly supportive of me. I'm so grateful for that, because that seems to not be so common with creative types. But yeah, they got me into piano really early. So I took classical piano for a few years, and it ended up not quite being my thing. When we got to really complicated pieces, my inability to sight read just got in the way, and yeah, I ended up leaving that. But I was getting into like the music that, well, my dad was listening to, classic rock, southern rock, little blues, little country, any of that. And I had a Yamaha synthesizer keyboard. I was trying to replicate sounds that I was hearing on records. I'd mess around with the guitar and bass sounds, and the keyboard did not have the spectrum to cover all the effects and just what I was hearing. I didn't know what I was hearing. Pardon me. But
well, that's fascinating. Let me stop you just for a sec, because I got questions.
Sure.
I got so many questions because I find this fascinating. Understanding, you know, that someone who may not have their sight is more than hypersensitive, or more sensitive anyway, to the sounds that they hear. They sort of have to be, because in some ways that's navigation.
Exactly.
Right? So you are far more attuned, it would seem, to the audible, to your audible environment, and therefore you could probably hear on a deeper level, because you don't have to worry about, you know, in a sense, sight getting in the way of that and distracting you and taking you out of that place. Do you feel that? Is that a sense?
Well, it's most certainly where I spend a lot of my focus, right? So, you know, say I put on a music video. Unless there's dialogue or sound effects, I'm hearing the music. I'm not seeing, you know, I'm not seeing the hot girls by the pool. I'm not seeing the melting buildings. I'm not seeing any of that. I'm just hearing the music. And, you know, a big part of marketing that, you know, the MTV days and all that, you know, was the video, the advent of that. And, you know, that just completely passes me by.
Well, that, sorry, let me stop you again, because that's very interesting to me. So, yes, I mean, in terms of a marketing perspective, the average individual that has their sight intact would be, I don't want to say at the behest of, but they would be, well, that would be a manipulation of the senses, right? They would be able to see, you know, these cute girls and stuff like that. If you take all those things out of the equation, what are you left with? The music, right? So were you able to, because you could see or not see, right, and you so therefore see past all of those visceral things, you would judge music necessarily on the value of the music itself, no?
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
And so what was your conception of that?
I don't tie myself to any one particular genre. I try to get involved in anything that I can, and I try to listen to anything that I can. But the problem is, if I'm listening to a bunch of songs and they all have very similar production, and you know, just they sound very similar, very washed, or you know, there's a lot of electronic processing that makes things sound flat. I mean, if you have songs that are created by a hit machine, they will sound the same. There is, you know, there are these one-hit wonders from any era of music that, you know, there was a popular sound at the time, and okay, well, we're going to put a tambourine on this, and we're going to have, you know, choir-like backing vocals, and we're going to have a jangly guitar with no effects on it, and that's going to be our sound. Or, you know, oh, this is you know, here we are in the 90s. You know, Dwight Yoakam's doing really well with country shuffles, bringing those back. Well, let's see, about 15 different artists come out with country shuffly type stuff. It's just, okay, well, it's been done before. I'm not interested. It's homogenous.
I would assume that you being able to, well, you'd be able to pick that out, that sort of homogeneity, once again, because you're not looking, there's no distraction for you in that sense.
Exactly.
Right. There's more of a pure, just listening to the music and therefore being able to judge it on its own merit.
Yeah, and that, it makes me laugh sometimes. I get descriptions of the odd person. Like, I know ZZ Top have beards. I know, I don't know. I know Freddie Mercury dressed very flamboyantly, for example. But all the visual tics of an artist are usually lost on me. I don't know what most of my friends look like. People will, is she the girl with blonde hair? Actually, I don't know. But, a big part of all this is imagery. And, I still participate in that. I wear leather at times. I have hats. I have different sunglasses that I choose. And it's, I recognize that expressing myself that way still has an impact. But do I appreciate it firsthand? No.
Once again, this is somewhat fascinating to me. So let's take women, for example.
Okay.
You can't see a woman, right?
No.
At this point, right?
No.
So what is it that would attract you, therefore, if it's not visual, right? Which is a big component of the male species, right? Seeing a beautiful woman. What, therefore, would attract you, and would that attraction then create something of a visual in your mind?
I would think so. A big thing with me, and this is initial contact with anybody, is the cliche for blind people is we feel faces. I don't do that. I think that's invasive, and especially during these times of health concerns, it's just not the right thing to do.
Epidemic proportions, yes.
What I like are handshakes, because hands are what interact with the world the most. I can tell if somebody's got calluses. I can tell if they use moisturizer. I can tell if they bite their nails. Things like that. And that immediately gives me an image of, oh, this is what this person, does all day.
What kind of dish soap they use?
Sometimes, yeah.
Like Madge, you're soaking in it.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I mean, that's fascinating, bro. That's just so fascinating to me. So in terms of music, I mean, you are on a trajectory right now. I know that through COVID, you were kind of figuring shit out, thinking about stuff, which direction to go, what am I doing? Maybe some days were better than others.
I think that was for all of us.
That was for all of us, man. Trust me. And you talk to your friends and your buddies and, you guys and your girlfriends and, people are pretty honest about that, what they went through and how that made them feel the last couple of years. But now we're coming out the other side a little bit.
I would like to think.
Right, yeah. As long as we don't slip back into monkeypox or some bullshit. Other than that, it seems like we're doing okay.
Yeah.
And so you've really started to progress, I think.
For sure.
From your posts on Facebook and stuff, and we talk, maybe once or twice a month.
Yep.
And you're learning the cello.
Yes.
You've learned some of the drums.
Yep.
And so, what is it that's gripping you these days? What is that?
Well, I don't like to be put in a box musically. When I first meet people, they'll, especially nowadays, if they're local, they might know me from somewhere. So, I know you from, playing blues shows at the Blues Can, or, well, probably just the Blues Can. Or, hey, I've seen you at Big Al's playing country. And it's just, yeah, but that's far from all I do. So I've been making an effort, and also taking advantage of the fact that I have a lot of teachers in my orbit to work on other instruments. So I will show up with drumsticks now. I will show up with a guitar. I like the alto sax. I love Paul Desmond from the Dave Brubeck Quartet. always have. And I love the layering of a cello. And I started reaching out to people. Eventually, I found somebody, and she was kind enough to help me walk through the process. I had my first lesson yesterday, in fact.
Did you really?
Yeah.
And so, do you mind if I ask your name?
Christine Williams.
Christine Williams.
Yeah.
So a local pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she teaches out of her home, and I think she does virtual stuff, but I can't do virtual. I don't connect with it. But she actually picked me up. We went out to Cochrane, and there was somebody selling a used cello, and it just so happened to be in my price range, and it was of adequate quality that I could learn on it, and bought that. She got it set up for me, and yesterday was all about learning the anatomy of the cello, learning how to properly hold the bow, how to have it sit. And by the end of an hour lesson, I was making noises that were not bad. And I now have a cello in my basement.
Good for you, man. Good for you. And so is the cello something that you've always sort of desired to take on and now have the ability to do it?
I wouldn't say always, but it's something that I've noticed. I've enjoyed cello and things. That's how it worked with drums.
Right.
I had a drum kit in my basement for basically just anybody who came over, and we'd have for band practice, jam sessions, whatever. And during COVID, the drums were sitting there and there was nobody to play them. So I sat behind the kit and just started tapping away. It wasn't very good to start off with. Nobody is. But I started asking people for tips, and I started getting better. And eventually it got to the point where, hey, I can hold a beat, but I'm doing everything by ear, and I don't quite know the name of anything. Alita Shadell, she teaches out of Long and McQuaid, the Marlborough location.
Okay.
And
does she play with Bobby Goss?
Occasionally she gets hired, and she plays with the Greg Vardy band.
Okay.
Yeah, she's just a really sweet person. Mostly works with children, actually.
That is something that I've noticed with the community. We're going to get into a little bit of this maybe at the end of the podcast, but you've reached out a lot.
Yes.
But a lot of people have reached back.
Certainly.
Yeah. And I think that, once again, I mean, that's within this community, that's one of the reasons that I do this show. But I've really seen the hands and feet of it.
Yeah.
Where you're concerned in particular. The whole thing about you, it almost seems to me like you want to expand these days, like you want to grow.
Yes.
You want to add more sonic elements to your, not only your repertoire, but maybe some writing. And the exploration of music seems to be just a really exciting endeavor for you, yeah?
It is. And there's been other people because at times I've been a bit skint when it comes to a gear fund. And at one point I said, it'd be cool to have a splash cymbal. Just something that vague. And another drummer who's actually been on your podcast, Jerry Toland, who reached out and just, hey, I got a spare. And we were talking over Messenger, and we ended up meeting up at a jam. It's just, okay, how much do I owe you for it? You don't.
Wow.
What do you mean? I got gear up the ass. You can have it.
Wow.
And it's just, dude, I barely know you.
Right.
And of course, there's plenty of mutual friends, and we've connected through Facebook. He wasn't a complete stranger, but I've been touched, and I could go on for an hour about different little things that people have done, and it's not all about giving me stuff. I promise.
Right.
But
it's part of being a community.
Yeah, and I'll reach out. I'll make a Facebook post just asking for advice. Just something pretty benign. Let's I don't know, a guitar example. do you look down at your fingerboard when you play? No.
Right.
Because I obviously can't, but I know a lot of people do, but some people don't. And I didn't know this.
Well, isn't that what community is all about, though?
Absolutely.
About connecting and about really getting to know your brothers and your sisters. I mean, Facebook is one thing, but you can hide behind a veneer on Facebook.
Oh, you
know what I mean? Like you can have, it's not so much about personality as persona on Facebook. But when you get, face to face, and when people reach out, when Toland, throws a splash symbol at you.
Yeah.
And, McNiven, if he actually would have thrown it, yeah. Jerry, don't do that. I'm going to tag Jerry in this, and Chris, because, come on, man, that's what it's about. And, this podcast exists to dialogue and to get the word out there and to dialogue on the behalf of the entire, civic music scene. But to me, you being out there and you reaching out to the community in the ways that you have, and like you said, not just to get, right? But to give and to share and to be close to. You also talked to Lisa Jacobs not that long ago, right?
And that was a really eye-opening experience, because she's somebody that's I just don't I don't meet a lot of bass players. I do at jams for sure, but generally the working bass players are a bit busy, and if I'm playing bass on gigs, I think the last thing that had multiple bass players on it was Spinal Tap's Big Bottom or something. So I finally was able to arrange a meeting, and the thing I noticed halfway into it was she's such a lovely person, and I had noticed, oh no, I've been talking about myself for most of this, but she really wanted to hear my story to understand. And at the end of it all, she was saying, I kind of started in a similar place. I hosted jams, I took whatever opportunities came around, I expanded to guitar, I did what I could, and I made connections, and here I am, a couple decades ahead of you. You got to know who to talk to, where to go.
Absolutely. You do have to ask questions, because you got to learn, right? You got to fall on your ass. You got to pick yourself back up. And, there's one thing, there's one word, professional. There's another word, curated.
Sure.
Masterful. Would be another term for that, and it seems to me like you are on a road to that. I mean, professionality, if that's even a word, comes out of the pursuit of excellence.
Sure.
Right? So that to me is a byproduct of the excellence that you exhibit, whether on the band, certainly within your personality and who you are. It's that gets you maybe the money and things like that. And you and I were talking about the sort of financial aspect of it, prior to coming on today. And I would like to visit that a little bit.
Sure.
I talked to a lot of my brothers and sisters, and, things are not the same. I do not say that as in some sense of nostalgia.
Sure.
What I do say it as a marker of a certain paradigm. So an experience that was had, right? And then I take a look at the experience today.
Yeah.
And I just see that music, and not only me that says this, is not necessarily as sustainable as it used to be.
No, not at all.
Right. We talked like back in the 80s, once again, not being nostalgic, just looking at the history of what I've been through with music. Everybody was making a living. Everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Your rent was cheap. The gigs paid about as much as they do today. That hasn't changed. And yet when you come up to today, there's less gigs, the same money, and no one is necessarily remaining sustainable. I would say, when I take a look at a guy like you in particular, and I see the passion, the drive, the determination, the desire, I see a guy that could exponentially benefit from being in a place where he wasn't concerned about his day-to-day, and he could just go hard after his shit. You know, we also talked about, and I'll let you speak back to this in just a second, but we also talked about, you know, this whole thing where, you know, clubs are kind of paying shit, right? Because if they pay too much, they can't exist, right? They'll fold and they'll go under and there won't be a place to play. And yet, you know, of course, that directly affects the musicians themselves. They don't make money, therefore, and right? So what if it isn't? If we got our money from something else, and I referred to Ireland as instituting UBI about 6 months ago as a pilot project for the next 4 years. So far, it doesn't seem to have done anything bad for anybody. I don't know where they're at in the process at the moment, but it seems to me like a good try.
Sure.
It seems to me like something to be tried. It has been tried in Canada, I believe in Manitoba, in northern Manitoba back in the 70s. They did it until they changed government, and then the new government disbanded the entire thing. And it's actually even hard to find any documentation of it, but it does exist. And they put this one town on UBI. Nobody quit their job, although they might have worked 1 day less. There wasn't a rise in drug abuse or laziness. Everyone seemed to be of healthier mind. They took more time for their family. They pursued their interests more than the things that they had to do, the things they wanted to do. I don't know. What do you think about what I'm saying?
Well, there's definitely something to be said for being able to work to the degree that you are able and to the degree that you want to. My dad worked in arenas for 30 years, and his greatest joy was that he had a 4-day work week. He didn't work any less hard. He, to this day, he's got consequences from, having to put up the boards and bending over and doing the cleaning, the grunt work of working in arenas. I mean, people see the guy on the Zamboni and they think, oh, that's great. Yeah, try cleaning a locker room after 30 hockey players have been in it.
Right.
But, he'd work Sunday to Thursday Sunday to Wednesday or Monday to Thursday, depending on the season. And he'd have 3 days to relax, support his family, pursue his interests, watch sports, all that. And he would come back invigorated. And, he saw that as such a luxury. And it's to be able to pick and choose gigs and not have to grind it out where you don't want to be as a musician is so important, because that is the road to burnout. If you're playing places that you don't want to play over and over again, it turns something you love into something you hate. And that's a terrible feeling. I've been there.
Well, and not only that, Sal, but it seems to me that there would be more time for collaboration.
Yes.
There would be more time for rehearsing.
Yeah.
For getting together a solid show.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a product. A show. Therefore there could be maybe greater community because you're hanging out, you're getting to know one another, on a visceral level and on a real, in a working environment. And there would be time for creation, right? So where you're actually creating, you're writing together, you're, like I said, collaborating, right?
Yeah.
Because I know, if my observation is correct, I've seen you write on Facebook a time or two, I started this band, or I tried to do this, or
Yeah.
And I think, it just seems to me that perhaps if you had more time, you might be meting out those greater goals.
Well, it's trying to work around people's lives, and the more people you try to work with, the more complicated that becomes. A lot of people have families. Some people have substance use issues. Some people are, unfortunately, just flaky. That's how they are. And finding the right people is like striking gold. People complain, oh, this scene can be clicky and whatnot. No, people know who's reliable, and it's difficult that way when you've been burned so many times. Like I've become. I didn't start in music to become a side player. That's what I've been doing for the most part, and I've really come to enjoy it actually. Playing, being part of the whoever band, the this guy band, the that guy band, playing, writing bass lines for his original, playing guitar for her original song, whatever.
But what do you really want to do? That's the question.
Well, all of it. I would like to continue to take side gigs, but I would love my own project. However, it is so difficult to find players that have the time and the skill set to be able to collaborate.
But see, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
If people had more time, then that time would exist for these sorts of things.
Certainly.
Now, of course, people could fill up their time any way they wanted to, but there would be more opportunity, more chance that part of that time may be filled up with the things that you're, the goals that you're wanting to pursue and the people to do it. I mean, we know that flakiness is a symptom, right? We know that drug addiction is a symptom.
Yep.
More than it is the absolute problem. So once again, people would have more time to perchance be more introspective and to find out why they're flaky. Flakiness or drug addiction or any of these things that you're mentioning, to me are symptoms.
I agree.
Of problems that arise from environmental factors, perhaps, psychological factors or biological factors. They are not the person. They are the response to the environment in which we live in. If that environment was necessarily more conducive to mental health, to a proper way of living, you might find less flakes. You might find less drug addicts. Therefore, once again, coming back to it, Nietzsche, I've been reading a lot of Nietzsche and the philosophers. And to Nietzsche, creating was man's highest calling. Creating, right? Being that creative force. And as far as I'm concerned, every person in the world, sans maybe a few, create. Everyone creates. Whether or not they call themselves artists or not, I don't know. I don't think anybody needs to call themselves a celebrity. I can say that. But the fact that we can create, and the fact that that's what you want to do, and that's what I see people getting behind you in this community. And it makes me so happy to see that. You're a guy that desires excellence. You're a guy that desires that, being a curated player. Go ahead.
And there's ways that I've had to draw boundaries with being supported. I had a major surgery last year, and I was public about it more because it was just what I was going through, and I had some frustration around the health system at the time, and people kept bandying about the idea of a GoFundMe, and I didn't want that. I would not accept that because, I still live at home. I did have to sell a few pieces of gear, but for the most part, it was stuff that I didn't quite need. It was just, the impetus for it. A lot of our health system did cover the costs of what I needed. However, there were people more than happy to throw some money my way. I don't know how much it would have been, but, I just kept thinking, there are so many folks that are actually going to be on the street if they don't get help. Not that it would be a waste, but my thinking was, don't waste this on me. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. I feel held up, and that's all I needed.
Well, sorry, can I just interject real quick? Because once again, I feel that there's a duality here, right? I mean, we do help each other. We want to help each other, and we should help each other. That's what community is.
Yeah.
And we've lost a great amount of that. Even though we live in communities, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the indigenous, in a sense, way of living. You know what I mean? Where that community, where they held their babies for 2 years without putting them down.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was the mental health of the child, was the fact that you held your baby in your arms for 2 years and connected to that child, so that child could grow into the trust of his mother. The people that we put into power, that are our public servants, could necessarily be doing the job of a GoFundMe. And of that responsibility. It's not like people don't want to, be responsible to you, and not that they shouldn't be. But I also think that there's a responsibility of these systems put in place that could be doing a better job of that themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I accessed resources. I mean, I needed new prosthetic eyes. And, initially I was a little concerned about the cost. But when I went up to Edmonton to have them done, because of my tax bracket, there is coverage that I didn't know about, and you wouldn't know about unless you were, getting prosthetic eyes.
Right.
But because that's all he does, they call them ocularists. There's, I don't know, maybe 6 in the country. It's not a very common thing. I mean, how many people need prosthetic eyes? But,
right.
I had no idea about that. I'll take my glasses off for a second.
Yeah.
That's what
dude.
I got.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's what they cost, but you look like it. Come on.
But yeah, and those were handmade by a man in Edmonton, and that's
amazing.
That's how it has to happen. You don't order prosthetic eyes off of Amazon. They have to be. It starts off with a wax mold, and then that's taken out and then finalized, and there's all of this reshaping that happens, and actually had to have one of them resized later on. I went back up there and just had a bit added so that just to keep the lid open a bit more, because it was drooping. And it's not something everybody hears about. I mean, and not even everybody who's blind. A lot of the times, people have their natural orbital organs intact. They can't receive the signals. So it's all very individual. But yeah, after all that, if I'd needed, for example, say $3,000, I probably could have asked for it and maybe gotten a portion or all of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't need it.
Right.
But the fact that people were, reaching out and checking up on me and, just how are you adjusting? How's that going? That was enough to, fill my heart.
Well, and that's another great thing about our community. Calgary is, I think, per capita, one of the largest volunteer centers in North America. And, good on us for that. Once again, I think that there are other ways and more efficient ways, taking the responsibility necessarily off the individual themselves, where it doesn't need to be. But the fact that this city reaches out to you and to other people, I don't know what it is about the kids these days, but you guys, like when I was 20, I was just smoking dope and listening to Black Sabbath, and
I've done some of that.
Sure. And you shouldn't not. But, that was kind of, you know what I mean? We were all just wanting to be rock stars back in the 70s, and you guys are so far more educated. I even look at my kids, that are like in their 30s now, right?
Sure.
And they're just, grown up gentlemen, just something that, I don't know, we've progressed. In that respect, I think we've progressed. There's more knowledge now, more information, and you have a great head on your shoulders. I mean, you really do. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here, because your perspective, I think is invaluable to this community.
I appreciate that.
And, I mean, even though people have given to you, I think that this is the way that you give back to your community. And when I see guys like you chasing the education and the civic proliferation of your art, that's, you know what I mean? That's part of what I have in mind and what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for taking the time with me, and not just me, not because you're sitting here with me, but there's a plethora, an entire city out there, I think, that loves the shit out of you and respects you and wants to support you. And I know that you want to support.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate you doing this, brother.
Yeah, no, and that's why, I mean, when you first asked me, I was laughing to myself. Me? that encapsulates the whole thing.
I know. You know what this guy said to me? He said, I don't know if I have anything to say. I'm like, are you kidding me? All you have is good shit to say. And at that point, you couldn't see into it.
No.
But, I mean, come on. The proof is in the pudding here.
Yeah, but then I started, you started putting up, I think the podcast was on pause for a little bit. Am I correct?
Yes,
yeah.
You would be correct.
So I started seeing the newer episodes, and people I knew, Lisa Jacobs, Ray Duhane, Jerry Toland, musicians that I respect and have known for years. And it's just, okay, well, I guess you don't have to be, you don't have to be anything, I don't know how to word this.
Yeah, the whole thing about this show is that you have as much to say as a 60-year-old guy that's paid every due he's ever had.
Sure.
Because you are the new generation. You are the generation coming up, and you know what you want better than anybody else can tell you.
Right.
Right? So to me, that's an invaluable thing, to sit here and to listen to you say, look, I could benefit from this. I could benefit from that. As a 22-year-old, am I right?
Yep.
22-year-old.
23 in February. 23
in February. Happy birthday. I'm sure I'll see you. That knows what he needs, to make it in this life and to do the best job he can.
Yeah.
And that's why this exists. It also exists to give, praise to those who have, come before you and done great, the great works that this city has seen and this planet in some respects has seen. And so, it exists for that. It also exists just to dialogue about how to do things better. Is there a construction that works better? What would that take? And that's another reason, I want to do a town hall.
Yeah.
And have you and every musician and artist that calls themselves that in the city come out, show some emotion. Right. We're not going to solve everything in the first town hall or on the first night. There is no expectation of that. It is to allow us to speak and allow us to emote and to get some shit out.
For sure.
Yeah. And from there, maybe there's an idea of how to make things better. And I think that moving into a new epoch, these conversations need to take place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, brother.
Thank you.
And before we go, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this, but Brent Bexon.
I know.
Came by.
This was amazing.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell this story real quick. Brent Bexon came by yesterday. I'm trying to tell it to both. And he dropped off a cymbal bag that Brian Cymbal wanted to bestow upon you.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to hand that to you. I'm probably going to fuck up my green screen, but I don't care. And you all just have to forgive me. So I'm going to do that right now. Just sit there and I'll come over and I'll give it to you. All right? You all just hang on 2 seconds. So I'm going to put this in your, okay, there we go. I'm probably fucking up the green screen really bad right now, but that's okay. So this is, and I want to thank Brian for this.
Me too.
This cymbal bag, sorry, that's right in your face, for, doing that. That's what I'm talking about, this city. I'm going to go back to, that's what I'm talking about, this city, man. People love you. And that comes without expectation. that is just who you are. Now, yes, I wanted you to reach in the bag because you probably don't know about this.
It was hinted to me, but
Okay.
specifics were not given.
Okay, go for it. And yeah, pull that puppy right out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Can you hold that up? Right there. And I mean, that is the real deal, man. That is a trashy, shitty. Let me see here. Oh, that is nasty. I mean, it looks like shit and it sounds like gold. And I know Brian wanted you to have that. Brent came over yesterday, and I've never met Brent before. Once again, you're connecting people. How dare you? Brent came over. I've never met him before. And Brent, you know, it was great spending a couple minutes with you, man.
Yeah.
You know, and I've never met Brent. And he's another drummer.
Yeah.
In the city. And so, I don't know, man. You know, like Merry Christmas.
Yeah, well, and he gave me the background. I mean, I'd been to Axe Music before it closed, but I always spent time in, you know, the bass room, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Like one of the few places that carried Spectors and Jackson basses, and you know, I'd screw around, and it was a nice spot, but I didn't spend all that much time before it closed. Mm-hmm. And then Brent messaged me and just, hey, do you know Brian Cymbaluk? No, I mean, I've heard the name, but I don't know him. Add him on Facebook. Okay. So we started messaging back and forth, and then, yeah, they coordinated this, and my gosh, I mean, I know I've mostly talked about drummers. There's been plenty of guitar players that have helped me out too. I've gotten the opportunity to learn from Tim Williams, living legend in my opinion, like extremely talented and full of like his storytelling it's genuine, and you know, he's a wealth of musical knowledge. Jim Baxter, who's just he's a local guy. I mean, I don't think he was born here, but he moved here when he was 21. He's been at it for years. Everybody loves Jim. And most recently, a guy who came in from New York, David Hirschman, who you've gotten the chance to
gig with him about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and he's been, you know, showing me jazz chords, and just the amount of people who have you know, been to my place and, you know, been able to help me out in the way that I need, you know, not over Zoom, not trying to throw books at me, you know, not trying to just, oh, here's a YouTube video, figure it out, punk. You know, the people who took the time. And, you know, they're professional teachers. Some of them I paid. Some of them wouldn't take payment. I'm perfectly happy to, especially somebody who's self-employed. I mean, I'd rather support you than not.
Right.
But, yeah, it seems like every couple of days I'm thrown by somebody's kindness.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love this scene for that reason. And therefore, because your podcast is targeted towards, you know, local musicians and, you know, community building and all that, I realized a couple days ago that I think I should be on it. And here we are. We just did an episode.
We just did. The first and not the last.
All right.
You can bet on that. Brother, I mean, how does that make you feel? That you know, I love that. I don't know, the cymbal bag thing just kind of touched me. You know, when Brent was over here yesterday, I just thought, goddamn, that's what this city's about.
Yes,
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you who are listening right now. And I mean, please support local live music. We have so much talent. You know, I've been welcomed by so many facets of the music community. I've made so many friends in a relatively short amount of time, and I'm nothing but grateful to be a part of things.
Man, this city could kick so much ass we don't even realize it. All the ingredients are there to bake that fucking cake. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what I believe, and I believed it, you know, because I know the amazing players in this city. I know the heart of this city. I want to, you know, just shout out to Brian Cymbaluk. You know, thanks, man. Thank you, Brent. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope I'm going to get this out before Christmas, so I'll say Merry Christmas to y'all. I genuinely thank you for tuning in and for taking part of this. I think a town hall is absolutely necessary, and I want to make that happen. I'm going to be delving into that in the new year. But until then, y'all be well. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you, Gavin.
Yeah, and we'll see y'all very soon. Bye-bye. All right. So there you go, brother. That was amazing. That was